Sorry, I'm Eric Thies. I'm an educator in West Ada.
Eric, could you spell your last name?
T as in Tom, H-I-E-S.
Thank you.
Yep. But there were comments made early in the hearing that the reason that we need to look at the standards, the reason we need to just get rid of all this, start over, is kind of twofold. One, they're a federal program. It's a national push to cram standards down our throats here in Idaho. And the second was that it's resulted in worsened test scores. And I've spent a lot of time looking at test scores in West Ada, both statewide and just West Ada, which is a pretty big population of students in the state. And I will admit that there are areas in which test scores have declined. And then there are other test scores and other measurements that have improved. And we can't just look at the bad ones and go, that's because of the standards. I took some notes and I was just brainstorming. I was thinking about correlation and causality. Just because the test scores, and I'll just assume the test scores have gone down, and we could debate about how much that's happened and hasn't happened, and I'm just not interested in that. I'll assume for now the test scores have gone down significantly. But what's happened over the last 10 years that might have caused that other than the implementation of new standards? And so the big thing really was the recession. And that took a while to hit education, but when it hit education, class sizes skyrocketed and programs were cut. These are the kinds of programs that teach the students that need remediation, that need the extra support to stay at grade level, that really, at the end of the day, improve those test scores. And those programs were cut in a lot of districts because we just couldn't afford the teachers, or we couldn't afford the materials, or we just couldn't afford to do it. Because the recession hit education like a ton of bricks when it hit us. And there just wasn't anything else for districts to do. So that may have caused those test scores. I got some more. There was this, and I'm trying not to be mean about this, but there were these 3 pillars of educational excellence or something like that was presented by Tom Luna back in the day, and it created a huge uproar. And whether they were good or bad, the result really was a mass exodus of teachers. That, coupled with the recession and the reduction in teacher pay, of course, caused experienced educators to leave the state, and there was a massive reduction in resources. And if you think that that didn't impact students' learning, I need you to go look up a guy named Hattie. He looks at what really affects student learning, and people in West Ada are like, I hate you, Eric. The biggest influence on student learning, based on meta-analysis of all educational research, is the relationship with adults in the school building, meaning teachers in the building. The relationships that they build are the most important thing. And when class sizes go up and passionate teachers leave the state, we don't have those relationships, and students aren't going to learn, and test scores are going to suffer. So that could have caused a reduction in test scores. We changed the tests, the state tests in Idaho. And not just the type of questions that we're asking students, which we did, and so now we've got to train them to answer those questions instead of just circling A, B, C, D kind of thing, right? And I've oversimplified that, but we've got to change the way they respond to questions so they can get full points for it. We've got to teach those kids to take that kind of test, or the scores are going to go down, right? So that might have caused it. Oh, and they're on computers now. We can't give paper tests to little kids, some of whom have, like, they go to school, that's the only computer they have, they get to use it for half an hour a day, and now we're going to give them a really important test on it, they don't even know how to use the mouse. Like, that might affect it. The other thing is that we recently started requiring all high school students to take the SAT or another college preparedness test. And when you only have the population of students who are planning on going to college take a test, they're going to outperform the kids who are planning to drop out. But we make both those kids take the test in Idaho, which really is a good indicator of how well students are doing, so I'm not complaining about that, but I think that's going to make the test scores go down. So correlation versus causality, there's a direct correlation between the amount of sunglasses sold and the amount of ice cream sold. I think that has more to do with summer than the sales pitch. So that's the first point I want to make. And so I'm not sold on the whole test scores have gone down because of the standards. I think that's pretty weak. The next thing is I want to talk about our standards themselves. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about the importance of standards, and they are stupidly important. And there's this idea that because they come from this national group of people, and then I want to point out, they were adjusted for Idaho. Like Idaho teachers and legislators and business came in and worked on reforming those so that they were right for Idaho. So we didn't just take it and then copy and paste. We did a lot of work on that to make sure they were right for Idaho. But just because it's national doesn't make it bad. Let's take something outside education I think more people might be able to relate to. I'm trying to put an addition on my house, and there's building code, most of which is like federal organizations, national organizations, have come up with these building codes, and they say I can't put a 1x1 frame on an exterior wall in my house and then just stick it in the dirt and call that another bedroom. They won't let me do that because my house will fall down, right? And that's a national thing. Like across the country you can't do that. That doesn't mean we should just reject that idea. That alone doesn't make it bad. And these were adopted by Idaho teachers, businessmen, and legislators. Like this isn't something that we just copied and pasted and call good. And even though they do mimic these national things, that doesn't mean that they're bad. In fact, I think they're fantastic. In case I didn't mention this, but the one thing, and I've got one more thing after this, but the one thing I'm really excited about is that there's a room full of teachers that all know that rule 08, 02, 03 is the one where the standards are. So we don't, no excuses. Don't ask me to look those up for you anymore. Sorry, that wasn't to you guys. And so I'm totally in support of the rules that are in there, even the 8th grade standard. As a high school teacher, I would love all of my students to be able to do basic arithmetic and read. And I would love to know, because we're not going to not teach them at high school if they don't do that. We're just going to put them on IEP 504 and identify those students that need that remediation. And that would really help me out as a physics teacher, knowing who can't read the textbook. So I like that. But I would support all of them. And then the last point I want to make is there's been comments about a lot of red shirts in here, and a lot of them say Red for Ed. And Red for Ed, what it is it's what we call to, #Red for Ed, is what teachers call to when we feel like education is under attack. And when you threaten to repeal our standards that we've worked really hard at learning and establishing, it really does feel like an attack because you're pulling the rug out from underneath us. Yeah, we're struggling to learn these standards and implement these standards across the state. And if we change them now before we really know if they're effective, you're pulling the rug out from teachers and they don't know what to expect anymore, and nobody can work under those conditions. Nobody would go to work saying, look, you've got a lot of really important work to do. What do you need me to get done? Well, I'll tell you next year. Like that doesn't work for us. We've got kids in our classroom now, and we need to know that there's stability in these standards. And you need to give us at least 10, 15, 20 years would be fantastic before we start changing these to make sure that they're right. And make sure that we know how to teach them appropriately before you start messing with them again. And I'm not opposed to little tweaks, but the wholesale, just removing them and starting from scratch, I've got to oppose that very, very strongly. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate your time.